historic event, and I mean that. We're into something that we've never done at East Valley Bible Church. We are actually going to take not just this week, but 4 weeks. As you looked at the bulletin today, I love the way it looked. I hadn't seen what they're going to do, but that'll be the bulletin for the next, I think, 4 weeks. Talking about area ministry. And we're going to talk about area ministry for 4 weeks. Maybe you've heard parts of area ministry or reference to it over the last 2 years. It's been 2 years we've been working on this. 2 years talking, preparing, planning, implementing, some pilot projects, and you've heard this thing called area ministry. So I'm going to take 4 weeks and talk about this. Let me give you just, if you hear area ministry, what is it? Well, we've got 2 inserts here in your bulletin that are really helpful. And I'm going to encourage you, I don't say this very often, you need to keep this insert. The one that's got on it, Mesa, Chandler, Gilbert, Tempe, Phoenix, that one. You need to keep it because that's a great overview of a biblical basis for area ministry as well as some specific things. Also, you'll see this insert. You'll see it's a door. At the top it says, take the next step. And this is what we're going to do. At the end of our 4 weeks, we're going to put together a whole series of community groups that meet specifically for 4 weeks, designed for those of you who are not yet in a community group to come and to experience specifics at a time. Come and say, join a community group. That sounds like pretty expensive. What's that mean? Here you go. How do I get out if I don't like it? Well, now you're out. 4 weeks and you're out, unless you say, well, we want to continue. For that special time, we need people who are willing to not just join the groups, but maybe host them. Don't even have to oversee it, but host them. Open your home. Details are there. If you would like to help us and be part of this, this is really important to you. It's important to us, and it's important to you. You can complete that and drop it in one of the boxes as you leave here today. Area ministry, in its simplest sense, acknowledges the fact that in a sense, we're what you'd call a regional church, meaning people, you, are driving a considerable distance, some of you, to join us. How many of you drive more than 15 minutes to get here on a Sunday morning? So if you look around the room I'm in, and they all sit over here too. They drive 15 minutes and they sit together on that side of the room. Well, historically we'd say, gee, it's hard to be part of a church. I'm traveling that far. And then even if you live right next door, here's what we hear all the time. The church is so big. I don't feel connected. I don't feel part of it. Area ministry is our attempt to address those issues, to allow you to truly feel like an intimate part of East Valley Bible Church. It is our attempt to take a large church and have it function very much like a small church. We take this region, and here's what we say. We divided it. We started, this is funny, and this is why you do pilot projects, and this is why it takes 2 years to roll something out. We started with alignments, by school districts. And then we started saying to people, okay, we want you to get involved in your area. We'd say, where do you live? And they'd tell us. I'd say, well, I live at the corner of McQueen and Elliott. Well, which side of the street? And we realized this was a little too complex. So here's what we did. We divided into 5 areas, and all you got to do is be able to answer this question. What city or town do you live in? Now, unless the answer is Tucson, you're going to be able to follow up from here, okay? So, I live in Mesa, Queen Creek, Chandler, Gilbert, Tempe, Phoenix, or other areas. Then over those 5 areas, we're trying to create literally, and this was always used in the church in a negative way, church within a church. We have 5 full-time pastoral staff committed to that. Each area headed and overseen by a pastor. And you'll meet them over the course of the next 4 or 5 weeks. And here's the whole idea. It's for us to minister more effectively to you, but more importantly, for you to more effectively minister to the people who are part of your sphere of influence, those inside and outside the church. Big buzzword. I don't know how connected. Sometimes we read the same stuff in here and we get so connected with it, we assume everybody's familiar with the term. But one of the very familiar, very, very hot terms right now is this idea of living missionally. Now, what that is, a missionary, a noun, missional, an adjective. It's to describe how we live. It's to understand that God left us here for a reason and for a purpose. God is sovereign. God brought you into his family. He's also sovereignly placed you in a neighborhood, placed you at work, given you these kids, given you these neighbors, and he's done it for a purpose. Some of you, God has given a very large sphere of influence. Some of you are running companies with lots of people who are looking to you for direction and guidance and leadership. They would say that you indeed are their employer, and you have a great opportunity there. Some of you, God's given people like Yale. God's given you this extraordinary opportunity. And now you take advantage of it. When I came back and I was going through my emails, and this made me laugh, I found an email from one of our pastoral staff guys, one of the area guys, Luke Simmons, to our own staff and elders. And he's responding to the question. This is our staff now. This is staff asking the question. Here's a question, quote, "How can it possibly take 4 weeks to explain area ministry?" Close quote. I thought, oh gosh, what great to be part of a team. But that's a fair question. How come this is going to take 4 weeks? And Luke responded and said, well, here's what we're going to do. The second week, Tom's going to talk about area ministry. How's it function? What's the thought process there? Here's how it's going to work. In 2 weeks, we're going to talk about the theology of community. I don't know if you ever thought about this, but the Bible speaks a great deal about us living with one another, loving one another, caring for one another, forgiving one another. One another's are huge. 3 weeks from today, I want to talk about living missionally. God left you here for a reason. But it occurred to us as we laid this out that we have been so invested in these 2 years that we can assume that you understand the need for an area ministry, and we could be talking about something you're going, well, I don't have a clue why they're spending time on this. Why would you staff 5 guys? Why would you go through all this? Why are we doing this? Anytime, and I want you to climb into my world here for a second. Anytime we begin to roll something out, one of the biggest hurdles we have is to overcome the difficulty in communicating. It's just impossible for us to over-communicate these things. Area ministry has consumed 3 or 4 guys full-time for 2 years. And now that's broadened. We are expending an extraordinary amount of time, energy, effort, and money on this. Why? And that's a fair question. So rather than assume we are all on the same page and need this thing called area ministry, rather than assume that, I want to talk today about making room for life. When Luke responded to the question, why is this going to take 4 weeks? Here's what he wrote about what I would say today. Tom's going to explain how the busy, overwhelmed pace of life keeps us from investing in the lives of others, both for healthy community and mission. Going to challenge people to examine whether the kind of lifestyle they live allows us to maximize our lives for the sake of God's kingdom. Paul writes to the church at Thessalonica and says, "We urge you, brethren, to excel still more and to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life and attend to your own business with your hands, just as we command you." One of the paraphrases of 1 Timothy 2:2 reads like this: "Pray every way you know how for everyone you know. Pray especially for rulers and for their governments to rule over us, so we can be quietly about our business, living simply in humble contemplation." I want you to know that I have borrowed liberally today from one of the books that I read on vacation called Making Room for Life by Randy Frazee. I observed that people are unique and different. I love vacation. I love it. Every year it gets, I get a little older, obviously, but every year it gets a little more difficult to come back. And I love to do like hardly anything. But one of my favorite things to do, Susan and I the other day are doing one of my favorite things. We're in San Diego, and there's not a lot of things that we like, but Susan loves to go to the Hotel Del once. That's just once. Doesn't care if we eat there, she just loves to go to the Del. And there's a store that is, many of you are familiar with the Del. So here's the restaurant downstairs, and there's a little lounge kind of thing where you can get an iced tea or an alcoholic beverage or something, a bar. And outside, the pool's there, but there's a woman, I would call it a woman's store for sure, right next door to it. A lot of white and light blue and stuff in it. A lot of pictures and junk everywhere. And I am a wonderful person to vacation with because I'm one of the few men in the world. I love to shop. I love to shop. But not in a store like that. So, I honestly, I go to an outlet. You put me in an outlet mall, I'm a happy little guy. So I said to Susan, babe, and that's her favorite. She loves that store. So I said, you go in a store, you do what you love, and I'm going to do what I love. I'm going to get something to drink and sit out there and watch the people go by. So I'm having a blast. And they're in all shapes and sizes and nationalities, a lot of speaking a language I didn't get. And I'm watching them, and they're all different. Lots of guys in shorts and black socks. I always am tempted to say, how are things in Munich? But I'm watching all of this unfold, and then Susan comes out, and she said, hey, what do we want? I said, let's just watch them a while. And then I try to figure out their lives and try to help them without ever, meeting them. I don't want to meet them. I just want to figure out who they are and what they're doing. They come in all shapes and sizes. And yet there is in the midst of this, and I want you to see this now, there is a midst of us in how we are common. Something happened yesterday. I'm a happy little guy yesterday. Granted, Syracuse is awful, but the Hawks win a game. May not win many more. That was fun. But yesterday afternoon, I got my Christmas message. How great is that? And it's about some of the similarities we have. One of the things that strikes me as similar is our lifestyle. And by that I mean how busy we are. So much so that most of us, when we're asked to do something, would say, I'd like to, but I'm what? Too busy. We have crowded schedules. Life is hectic, bordering on chaotic. And yet in the midst of that, there's something really interesting that's happened. Our lives are jam-packed and crowded, yet most of us would say we're lonely, have few or no good friends, that we're isolated, that we feel empty. Reading a book the other day where a guy had a great phrase. He talked about public privacy. We want to be in a public place like Starbucks, but we don't want anybody to interact with us. I was in a coffee shop. This is great. Tyler and I were in there, and I had my computer. And I was doing a little work, and then Tyler came and we were talking. And then Tyler left, so I'm wrapping up. There's a lady there. And I said to her, okay, I got to go to the restroom. Will you watch my computer? You know what she said to me? No. I don't want to be responsible for your computer. Okay. But when I'm thinking, why are you even out in public? Why are you even here? And that's not an unfair request. That's not a huge burden. Keep an eye on my computer. It's not like watching a kid or a dog or something. What we wanted to do is just give you a picture. So one of the families of the church allowed us to videotape them for a day. Take a look at this and see if it doesn't kind of, maybe sort of in some small way, capture your world as well.
Hey, Davis, I need that on my desk by noon.
Price check on aisle 5.
Just breathe. Another day. Just believe. Another day. Just breathe. Just breathe. do it right now. Just breathe. Just believe. Just breathe. Just believe. Just breathe, just breathe, just breathe, just breathe.
Yeah, pretty amazing, huh? That's a day. That's just like a day. Now, that's a non-school day. It's interesting because we had a guy following. By the way, I want to thank Guy and Janice Carpenter for allowing us to just follow. I mean, the kids for allowing us to follow him for a day, and really not even a day. We didn't even get to dark. We had a guy following me and said, "Man, she did like 5 loads of laundry." And had 6 trips with the kids to different places. They were like really work at home during the day. Yeah. That's busy. And that family only represents 12% of the families of the church in that biological mom and dad with kids where mom stays home. I mean, I'm watching that. I watched the video this morning for the first time. And I'm like halfway through it going, oh my gosh, I got to take a nap. Now, I will grant you that there may be some exceptions to that. You may look at that and say, well, that doesn't totally capture who I am, but for many of you, that kind of represents life, doesn't it? And we're starting with that assumption. Now, it could be scary, but we're starting with the assumption, based on our own experience, and based that I think that we're pretty in tune with the people who attend this church, that there is a sense of busyness. Now, when I begin to think about that, I ask myself a bunch of questions. Why is it life is that way? Does it have to be that way? Is it possible, if I look at that and say, it is that way and I don't want it to be that way, is it possible to change? If life is that crowded, is there something that's not getting done that needs to get done? And those are just typical. I would ask those questions. If I were at Fashion Square just talking to a random group of 100 people, we'd raise those questions. We have to dig a little bit deeper, so we would ask questions like, what impact does that have on my relationship with Christ? What impact does that have on my life with others? Because you can say, oh, I just want to have this vibrant relationship with the creator God of the universe. Well, that's only part of the reason he left you here. He left you here to have that vibrant relationship so that now you would take that relationship and it would transform the way you live as you begin to interact with others. Not just church people, but especially with those who are lost. Especially with people who have issues, where life is sloppy, where everything's not in place. Have you noticed that you tend to gravitate toward people who are easiest to deal with? I do. All of a sudden you see somebody coming and you start to make excuses on why you can't spend time with them. And yet, interesting, God drops them in your life, and at the same time, they tend to be the neediest of all. Right? Is it possible to make a trade? I read an article the other day in the Wall Street Journal about a guy who sat out. Maybe some of you have heard about this guy. He's written a book now. He started with a red paper clip and kept trading until he ended up with a house. Is it possible for me to trade this fast-paced, hectic, hurried, jammed, overpacked schedule, driven by kind of the urgency of the moment, trade it for a slower, planned, deliberate, organized, purposeful life? Now, let me stop here. Hit the pause button. Some of you have done that or are in the process of that. And to you, I want to really stop and say congratulations. We have a tendency, I think, at a place like this to assume everybody's too busy and then hammer, hammer, hammer. Somebody, and some of you have already taken steps to resolve that. I want to encourage you. And you need to step up and let people around you see that. Just to let them know that there is another way to live. I get nervous every time we get to this point. I want to be autobiographical. And I'm going to paint Susan and myself in a very positive light. And the reason I'm leery about that is I don't want you to think that I'm a proud, arrogant guy. Okay? And yet there's a burden here of, I hope, teaching. Years and years and years ago, Susan and I resolved in our life that we weren't going to live that way. We were not going to be driven by either the pursuit of stuff or trying to live up to some sort of an artificial lifestyle that was established by a bunch of people we don't even care about. I am so grateful for this, but one of the girls from the church, I don't think she made it, but she gave me this after something I talked about, I don't know, 6-8 months ago. I shouldn't put a date on it. And it stays in my office. It says, live simply. One of the key moments in my life is I'm with a friend. And this is probably 20 years ago. And I hadn't really thought about this till this moment. And we're driving back from downtown, and we're on the 60, and it's a mess. And it's like it was yesterday. We're a priest in the 60, and he's talking. He's built up to this point. He says, your life is so simple. You don't have a bunch of hassles in your life. You're not driven by a bunch of this stuff. Now, stop. I'm not saying we don't have problems. Life brings you issues, right? There's just stuff you can't stop. Susan has cancer. Nothing you can do about that. Okay? You have parents that get sick. You have parents that get old. They die. You have all sorts of life stuff. But he said, your life is so simple. You're not driving around like you're not doing this. You're not doing that. And I looked at him and I said, I could look at him because we were stopped in traffic. I looked at him and I said, and when I said this, I thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible. That's by design. We took control of those things that were controllable in our life. We took control of the kids. We told them, hey, you get one activity, pal. If it's student council, it's student council. If it's cheer, it's cheer. We aren't going to drive all over taking you to be in a bunch of different things. We're going to do ballet. Please don't say swimming. That was the worst. But, I mean, if you want to do that, do it, whatever it is. Okay? And our relationship with each other and with the Lord has been deepened because we decided we were going to live simply. And even with that decision, it's very complicated to live simply. It's not easy. And it's counter to the world you live in. What I want to give you today is no way an anti-material message. I love stuff. I've already confessed I was at the Dell. I'm sitting at the ocean. I love stuff. I got it. I fight that battle. But it is an anti-materialism message. My life is not driven by those things. I have decided to borrow liberally again from Randy Frazier's book, Make Room for Life. And early in the book, he writes this. Simply put, many of us have this is a great phrase, squeezed living out of life. We don't have the time to soak in life and deep friendships. We're always running around to get to the next event. This presents two major problems. First, our busy lifestyle stimulates a toxic disease called crowded loneliness. Second, even deeper problem, is that in our original design, we were created with a connection requirement. If this requirement is not met, we will die. That's what I want to talk to you about today. Is why are we living at this fast-paced, overwhelmed, too busy life? Do I have to live that way? That's just part of living in the good old US of A in this time and place. In fact, in the past, and this has been something that has been a core, I'm going to take you to a couple of passages of Scripture in a bit, but this has been a core fundamental principle of mine since God saved me. I was not saved by Him a year before I realized I have to learn to be content. Because my pursuit, this is here you go, God saved me in 1980, so I was, how old is that, 56, 31. 30. Right in the middle of launching a career. And it became very clear to me very quickly that the American dream, as I understood and pursued it, was not going to be allowed to be fulfilled if I were at the same time going to have a passionate desire to fulfill God's dream for my life. Now, God has that plan and dream. Are they necessarily in opposition? Not necessarily. Can you achieve both? Maybe, but it's going to be really hard. Because you know what? The American dream is expensive. It's by that you mean the measurement of success and accumulation and wealth, the continuation of that, the establishment of it. Why? Because it never ends, does it? we had a great pet once. Actually, Archie Bunker said the greatest pet you could have is a goldfish because they die way before you get tired of them. What kind of the next best pet is a hamster because they're about the same place. And we had this guy, and we had his hamster, Mikey. And Mikey was an incredible. I'm not into a lot of pets and stuff. And so I got Mikey, and I'm thinking, oh, brother. So, but this hamster became a metaphor for life. Mikey would disappear like all day. And then he would come out at night, and he would stretch. It was kind of interesting. He'd come out about 7:30 or 8, and he'd stretch and yawn and get on his wheel and take like about 15 laps and then dig back down. But then about 2 o'clock, he'd come out and he'd get on the wheel, and maybe that thing would just hum. He would go all night. And that wheel never moved, never in terms of direction, never went anywhere. He just going. If you stopped and you said, Mikey, let's talk a second. Where are you going? What do you want to do? What's your dream? What's your aspiration? What's the plan? He'd go, man, I do. And here's what Mikey did. He would eat, he would eliminate what he ate, and he would run on that wheel. And this is sad, but he becomes almost an icon for the way some of you are living. And that's no way to live. This is really serious stuff. When Luke wrote, and it's amazing, Tom's going to examine our busy, overwhelmed pace of life and challenge people to examine whether that kind of life allows them to maximize their life for the sake of the kingdom. I want you to stop and understand, because you may be thinking this way. And again, let me acknowledge, not every one of you are in this boat. Every one of you have different circumstances. Some of you may be here as a single parent, and in almost all cases, we can take this and multiply it by a factor of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 to get your life. Some of you may be single. I don't see that single people have any more freedom, really. The life's jammed with all sorts of stuff. But you may be saying, I'm just a mom or a dad, and this is just me. I want you to understand, in Frazie's book, he does this wonderful little exercise of talking about how expensive this is for the family. Here's what he writes. The way we're raising our children in a stereotypical suburbia is taking its tolls as we commit at least 7 deadly sins against them. And then he lists 7 of them. I met somebody after the service, and they said, I'm so discouraged and I'm so depressed over what you just said, which is typically not what you want to hear at the end of this. So I want you to know, I try to give you some hope. But the whole objective today is to just help you look at your life. And the hope is it can change. He talked about 7 deadly sins, just talking about kids. And I was not going to put this in here, but I just laughed as I worked my way through it and started to illustrate it because it really does take me back. He said, first of all, kids have lost their creativity. In most cases, the kids don't even know the kids in the neighborhood well enough to play with them. So they retreat to either watching TV or playing video games, rarely going outside. When's the last time you drove down the street and saw a group of boys or girls out in the street playing baseball? Never. It used to happen all the time. That's all we did. We got up in the morning and we tried to figure out, okay, what is it you want us to do today that's going to screw up our lives so we can get it done and get it out of the way? And we just left in the morning, we came back to eat, we left again, and we came in at dark. And we were creative. I would stand out in the back, and because you'd wear out a hardball, so we had rubber baseballs. They were hardball little baseballs, and there was a wall out there, and I'd be going, boom, there's a ground ball to Kenny Boyer. It's over to Stan Musial. Boom, there's number 1. And I'd pitch, and we do this all day long. You get these kids, and they are stumped when it comes to creativity if you don't plan it for them. Here's the second thing. They've lost all leadership skills. Jill Steinberg from the University of Wisconsin simply writes that kids have no ability to manage their own activities or lead anymore. There was always somebody that took charge. Here's the third thing. They've lost mentoring. Frazee said, I hung around with my brother who was 5 years older than me. I always had my brothers who were younger. I had 3 younger brothers. And we always had to find a way to make everything work. And there was always mentoring. And I taught them some things I'm sure that I shouldn't have taught them, but I taught them some things. And there was multi-generation around us. We lived at 1007 West 16th Street, and we're the second house in. The first house was a guy named Spike Croy. He was an old man who was retired from the Rock Island Arsenal. And every day, I'd go over and hang with this guy. He was perfect. I didn't understand it at the time, but this guy had it figured out. Because every day, he'd say to his wife, I got some work to do out in the back, and then he'd go and sit in the porch. It was perfect. And he taught me so much about life, and he'd spend time with me. And I'm out there one day, and I just started playing golf, and I'm trying to hit a sandwich. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm trying to hit a sandwich. He said, well, what kind of shot is it? And I said, well, I'm playing around the green. He said, put that stupid thing away. You're never going to be able to hit that. And he said, take a 6-iron and learn how to hit that 6-iron from about maybe 6, 8, 10 feet in. And just learn how to hit that 6-iron. I'm playing with somebody the other day, and I hit this little shot, knocked it up stiff. He said, the putt's good. It's an incredible shot. And he said, what'd you use there? I said, a 6-iron. He said, a 6-iron? Where'd you learn to use that? I said, Spike Croy. And so you got these kids now that they can't even look you in the eye because they've never related to anybody other than their own generation and own gender. Frazee said these kids have lost their conflict management skills. When I read that, I thought, what's he talking about? But he's exactly right. We would go and play baseball, and we weren't 3 batters into the game before we were arguing about whether the ball was foul or fair. And yet somehow we were able to play all day long. The kids now have parents to resolve it, lawyers to resolve it, commissioners to resolve it. There's nothing they can't handle. Any sort of dispute is here about, and they can't even talk anymore. He said they're losing health. Kids aren't healthy. He's not talking just about overweight kids. He's talking about the stress of life. Overscheduling is a major cause of stress in kids. In the hustle and bustle of life, kids are missing out on 2 very important things, family time and solo play time. I read an article in the Wall Street Journal that said the biggest problem that preschoolers are facing is stress. The stress of life. Now, that sounds silly until you go over to the Good Egg to have breakfast, and you watch that little preschool gig, whatever it is back there, and you watch these parents show up at 6 o'clock, and here's this kid who can barely move, dragging a blanket and a bear in there, and they're going to be there all day with somebody who's paid minimum wage to love them. How about this? How you feeling, by the way? Yeah? Feel good? I don't know. Not a good day. And I got for 5 weeks, I haven't been able to talk to anybody, so I'm throwing up on you and all of this. And I'm thinking. Here's another thing he says. He said, and it's really expensive. I'm talking to a guy the other day who gives hitting lessons, baseball hitting lessons. And we're getting specialized. Harold Piper was my Little League coach because the only way his kid could make the team is if he coached. They didn't know. He wasn't very helpful to me. But this guy gives hitting lessons. And he's talking to me about this demographic he's seeing where these kids are coming. They are 7 years old, paying $75 an hour for hitting lessons. Are you nuts? And I watch it all over. We played when I was in high school, and I don't look like an athlete. I got that figured out, okay? I understand that. But I played varsity in football and baseball, golf. Went out for basketball, but they already had one. But I mean, I did them all. I played every sport. I played every sport in high school. And no kid plays that unless he's an extraordinary athlete or she's an extraordinary athlete. They only play one sport. You go out for baseball and I say, you're not going to be playing football or basketball, are you? When I played Little League, we played 15 games. That was the whole year. We're done by the 4th of July, so you go on vacation. I played in the All-Star team, so we would play till we were done. We never got the Williamsport. So we played, 20 games? You got kids, 12, 13 years old, traveling, playing 100, 120, 150 games a year. This is nuts. Dance teams that are traveling internationally to compete? Are you crazy? And that's expensive. It's not just expensive with dollars and cents. It's expensive in the time on the family. Now, I imagine you can make an argument that we're spending family time together, but in most instances, that isn't the case. Here's what he says, and we got to really roll on, is we've lost the idea of family meals. We're never eating together. Listen to this. Americans now spend more money on fast food than they do on higher education, personal computers, software, or new cars. We spend more money on fast food than movies, books, magazines, newspaper, video games, and recorded music combined. A survey of American school children found that 96% could identify Ronald McDonald. The only fictional character with a higher degree of recognition was Santa Claus. The impact of McDonald's on the nation's culture, economy, and diet is hard to overstate. Its corporate symbol, the Golden Arches, is now more widely recognized than the Christian cross. I don't have a problem with McDonald's. It isn't about that. But I remember asking my mom one day, when was the first time you ate in a restaurant? And she couldn't think. She said, we didn't even think now. Think with me now. She was in Chariton, Iowa, so a small town. So we didn't have restaurants. The only restaurant we had was in conjunction with what? The hotel, because people staying there had to eat. I said, I don't know. I must have been a teenager or something. Let me ask you, when's the last time you ate at home? Together, other than Thanksgiving. That's something. Now, let me accelerate this just a bit. We now live in a place here, that's what is it, the fifth or sixth largest city kind of area in the country. I read an article the other day, I think it said 2030 there'll be I think it was New York and Chicago, or New York and LA, and then Phoenix. When I arrived in town, not that long ago, Hayden dead-ended at Via de Ventura. My brother was thinking about moving down here, and he had about a day with a realtor, and he came to me and he said, I wouldn't live here for two reasons. Number one, it's way too expensive. Number two, it's just too crowded. It's going to cost me $45 for me to get a place where I can really kind of afford what I need. It's going to cost me 45 minutes to an hour to commute each way, each day. It's the very same thing we were saying about Southern California not too many years ago. By the way, I'm going to just give you a heads up, and I've talked to you about it before, and I get a reaction every time, but you got to think through this commuting thing. If you're moving further and further east and you're working downtown, you are paying a huge price for that extra house. You either got to move closer to work or work out of the house or take the bus or change jobs. Because that stuff is not that important. I almost was going to talk about debt and savings and giving and then decided, I don't need to. All you got to do is listen to the news. I'm watching some guy the other day, and he's mad at the lender for saying you owe me the money. Look you're buying this house you can't afford. He makes a deal so you can get into it. You think he's going to let you stay there forever at that rate, and you're mad? You're mad because you're dumb enough to borrow more money than you can afford to pay back? Nothing wrong with him, man. And why did you do that? What is debt? I love this definition of debt. Debt, and this is informal. You're not going to find this at the business school. This is my definition. Debt is an instrument that allows you to pretend to be something you really aren't. You can look like you're something really special when you aren't. You don't have to clap for that. Just clap for this shirt or something if you want to clap for something. Gift. I want to take you to two passages of Scripture. I mean, you're waiting for that, aren't you? But that's just not kind of where we are today. I want to set this table. Two passages of Scripture. 1 Timothy chapter 6 and Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Now, if you don't have a Bible, there's a Pew Bible there. Now, and I just grabbed the Pew Bible this morning. I'm going to be teaching more using this so I can help, especially those of you that are kind of going, hey, I'm new to this, so I want to work you through, especially with page numbers. I did not realize this till this morning. The Pew Bible that we have starts renumbering pages when it gets to the New Testament. That makes no sense to me. But again, for those of you who are really new, the Bible is divided into two sections, an Old Testament and a New Testament. And in the Old Testament, you'll see it at the front, and you'll see it number on up, and then you'll see it start over again. That's the New Testament. So in the New Testament, it's page 165, and in the Old Testament, it's page 479. Because what I'm asking you to do is to swim upstream. I'm asking you to do something that the rest of the world is going to think is almost foolish to do. And there's no way that you are going to opt out of this non-ending lifestyle game unless you're motivated to do it. Now, I'm going to give you the one singular thing that will motivate you. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 6. I was not a Christian a year before I hung out in this passage, and I'm in it all the time. 1 Timothy 6:6, actually, godliness is actually a means of great gain when it's accompanied by contentment. For we brought nothing into the world, so we can't take anything out of it. If we have food and covering, with these we should be content. Now, I could make 1,000 points out of that, but what Paul is saying is, great gain for me is godliness, a real genuine understanding of who he is, and a sense of contentment. Not apathy, contentment. And I'm content if I have food and covering. He doesn't quantify the food. He doesn't say hot dog or steak. He doesn't say studio or 5-bedroom. And then he tucks in the middle an idea in verse 7. We brought nothing in the world. We can't take anything out of it either. Now look at Ecclesiastes chapter 5. Ecclesiastes chapter 5, Paul tells us some really basic truths. Verse 10. He who loves money will never be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with income. Verse 11, when good things increase, those who consume them increase. The sleep of a working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much, but the full stomach of a rich man doesn't allow him to sleep. These are wonderful truths. He says, listen, here's a basic truth. Whoever loves money will never be satisfied. There'll never be enough. There'll always be $1 more. There'll always be another deal. There'll always be an opportunity. And there is lingering in the back of our mind this idea that if I just do that, have that, get that, I'll be happy. If I can just do that. And our whole life is about that. If just that, if I can just change my circumstance, get rid of him, get rid of her, get these kids grown, buy this house, move over there. Or move away. I must have met 5 people who are miserable with their life that are moving in Montana. And all I can think of is, gosh, there must be a lot of cold, lonely, miserable people in Montana. I mean, so it's the geographical cure. That's what they talk about in AA. Okay? So here's the problem. I'm the problem. I'm the real problem. We're not talking about it. It's you, this. But if I go over there, everything will change. But the problem is, I'm talking to a guy who's on his 4th wife. And he's laying out. He's had a fat one, a skinny one, a tall one. He's had them all. And at the end of this, I listened to him for Lord knows how long, way too long. And finally, at the end, I said to him, the only thing that we see common in all 4 of these marriages is what? You. My friend, you're the problem. It's you. And you don't need marriage counseling. He doesn't need marriage counseling. He needs to come to grips with who Christ is and what it means to live for him. And that marriage thing will give you some tools, but it'll figure itself out. Whoever loves money is never going to have enough. I love this. When things increase, so do those who consume them. What he's saying is, as you get money, you just want more of it. The more money you have, the more you'll come after. Not just you individually, but the government as well. Never be satisfied. And what is the benefit? The sleep of the labor is sweet. A rich man riches present him no sleep. The hourly guy's happy. He goes home, gets a big gulp, watches Everybody Loves Raymond, scratches himself, goes to sleep. His boss is getting a call at 3 in the morning going, what about this? Shipping over here, we got this over here. I'm on the phone with Hamburg, Germany, we're moving over here, we're there too. And he's got all the money. And this guy's going, man, I don't understand why he's doing that. Look at verse 15. As he came naked from his mother's womb, so he will return. He'll take nothing from the fruit of his labor. Do you see Ecclesiastes 5:15 and 1 Timothy 6:7 are the same idea? In both contexts, one Solomon, one Paul, both are talking about stuff and contentment, and there's the secret to contentment, to understand I came with nothing and I'm leaving with nothing. That around me is this tyranny of things. Randy Frazee writes about a TV. He said, let's say I get a free TV. Now what? I hook up the antenna, subscribe to cable, buy a new DVD player, rent movies, get surround sound, buy a recliner. I watch my program so I can watch my programs in comfort. It all costs me money. It takes huge amounts of time and energy and attention. The time I devote to TV and its accessories means less time for communicating with family, blah, blah, blah. Then he asks this question, so what's the true cost of my free television? There's a wonderful, time is just away from us. Jim Elliot has a wonderful line that he writes in his diary. Needs multiply as they're met. Now, this is in the 50s, but here's how he lays it out. A car demands a garage land a garden tools, and tools need to be sharpened. Now, let me acknowledge a whole bunch of stuff here. Okay? This would be a great Sunday to have an extra half hour and to do a Q&A, and I'd love to do it with you. Because I got all sorts of questions, and I know the questions. What about making time for people? What about this over here? I got all that. You have to take control, and you have to figure this out. The key to this whole thing is you being honest with you and defining what's your motivation. Is there anything wrong with having a nice whatever? No. Good, no. But why do I have a nice? Why do I care about this? Why does it matter so much to me that I'll go into this massive debt so that you will think differently? Why does that matter to me? Never are you going to hear from me an anti-material message. You will hear anti-materialism. And for some of us, this is very difficult because we got to start to defining how much house is enough, how much car is enough, how much is enough, how much save. I'm at that point, 58 in November. Okay? I'm trying to figure out, okay, I got to retire. How much money do I need to retire? When does it become prudent savings? When is it hoarding? This is tough stuff, but you can't walk away from it. Here's why. Because it's not a material issue, it's a spiritual issue. You have to define it. You have to take care of that. You have to figure it out. And you got to start to deal with excuses. Why would somebody live this way? Well, I may fall into the trap of thinking, well, everybody does it. Everybody doesn't do it. This is part of being an American. This is the American dream. Here's a lie I love, and I worked with a ton of guys, and I saw myself just at times fall into this. Well, this is just a season I'm going through. Now, let's be smart. If you're in the jewelry business, for example, you're not going to get off work from Thanksgiving to Christmas. It is just a season. But if I'm living at that pace all my life, when I was in the real estate business, here's what I saw. When times were good, guys would say, I got to work hard right now because I got to make hay while the sun shines. Times that get bad, and they'd say, now I got to work twice as hard because it's bad. It was always a season. You got to ask yourself, if you're a single, and your mate, if you're married, why are we living this way? If we both agree this is nuts and we both agree this is crazy, why are we living this way? Now, here's why this is an important area of ministries. I don't want to have us all come together and go, yes, that does demonstrate how we live. And now we jump on as the church and say, now we're going to make it even more complicated. Now we need a night from you for couples to be together. A night from you for men to be together. Women over here, singles over here. We don't want to just add to that. And yet, it's important for you to understand God has for you a way that you need to live. I apologize for how abrupt that ends. But all I'm trying to do today, and judging by the look on some of your faces, we've done it, is to make you see that you may be living in a very complicated way. And let me give you some real hope. It's never too late to get off of this, but the younger you are, the easier it is to break this. You don't want to climb on this game. If you are some student borrowing $125,000 to go to college to get a job that teaches English literature at $40,000 a year, you're nuts. There's no reason to live this way. And all you're doing is putting yourself in bondage and ultimately robbing yourself from the freedom to be the man, the woman, the student that God called you to be for junk or stuff. I am so far over time, but let me go one other way. Some of you have been very, very, very blessed. Don't walk out of here beat up, going, oh my gosh, here it is. Now I feel guilty. I'm going to get in my car. I'm not judging. What I'm saying to you is God's given you a special responsibility and saying to you, you got to steward that. You have a special responsibility. He's given you freedom. Some of you, he's given extraordinary time. You know what our ladies will say? Gosh, they're going to kill me in children's ministry. You know what our ladies would say? Our ladies would say this to me. Here's the problem. Here's the challenge we have with our mentoring program. We don't have ladies to mentor. We don't have the mentors. Not the ones who want to be mentored. We don't have the mentors. Well, that can only mean one of two things. Either A, we just got a bunch of spiritual women who are midgets around here spiritually, or their time's all committed somewhere else. Something's wrong. Right? The last thing we ought to have, and I'm not trying to gore this ox here, the last thing we ought to have is an economic problem. I said this during the last building campaign. Good news, bad news. Good news, we got all the money we need. Bad news, it's in your pocket. Okay? But we got all the money we need. But it's true. It's going to require a total mind shift on your part because you're going to have to start thinking like God rather than like man. We are so far over time. We got to stop. Father, help us not live this way. And we may say we don't want to do it, but God, for those who are couples, knit their hearts together in this desire to be free. Not so we can do nothing, but so we can be the men and women you call us to be. To the singles, let them embrace that singleness and the time and the energy. To those young men and women that are here, let them hear this message and let it be a core value of their life. We pray in Jesus' name, amen. Have a great week. We'll see you next week.